My fiancée wanted to explore her feelings for another man. So I let her, and she lost everything. Hello, read it. I always believed that love was something unshakable, something that grew over time like roots digging deep into the earth. I thought if you built something strong enough, if you gave your heart fully, there was nothing that could break it. I was wrong. Some things don't break suddenly. They rot slowly, from the inside out, until one day you wake up and realize the foundation has already crumbled beneath your feet. By the time you notice, it's too late. The damage has already been done. I didn't see it coming, and I should have. My name is Daniel Whitaker, and I was 29 years old when I learned that love, the kind I had spent years believing in, wasn't always enough. I met Olivia when I was 23, fresh out of college and stumbling my way through adulthood. I had just landed my first real job. Nothing impressive, but enough to cover rent for a tiny apartment and keep me afloat. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I was figuring things out, the way everyone does in their early 20s, trying to balance responsibility with the lingering illusion that I still had time to make mistakes. Then Olivia walked into my life, and suddenly, everything made sense. I met her at a mutual friend's party, the kind of gathering that was too loud, too crowded, where people drank cheap beer and talked about their big dreams like they were just around the corner. She wasn't like the other girls there, wasn't trying too hard to impress anyone, wasn't scanning the room for attention. She carried herself with an effortless confidence, like she knew exactly who she was and where she was going. She was beautiful, but it wasn't just that. It was the way she felt different. She had a quiet kind of control, the type of presence that drew people in without demanding it. She laughed at my terrible joke that night, not in a polite way, but like she genuinely found it funny. We talked for hours, long after most people had left, and I knew, even then, that she was someone I wanted to hold on to. Our relationship moved fast. Within weeks, we were inseparable. She was the kind of person who made you want to be better, who had this fire in her that made everything seem possible. I was drawn to it, to her. She had ambitions, plans, a roadmap for her future that she followed with laser focus. I admired that about her. While I was still figuring out what I wanted, Olivia knew. She had studied business and was determined to carve out a place for herself in the corporate world. She wanted stability, success, a life that was built on more than just dreams. And I wanted to give that to her. I wanted to be the man she could rely on, the one she would build that future with. By the time we had been together for 2 years, we moved in together. It was a small apartment in the city, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We spent our nights cooking together, watching bad reality shows, talking about the future like it was something solid, something we could hold in our hands. Life wasn't always easy. Money was tight. Work was exhausting, but we had each other. That was enough. At least I thought it was. As the years passed, I fell into the rhythm of stability. I worked hard, got promotions, started saving for something bigger. Olivia climbed the corporate ladder with the same ruthless efficiency she approached everything in life. She was driven, always reaching for the next step, always wanting more. I admired that about her. But sometimes I wondered if I could keep up. There were small moments, things I brushed aside. She would get frustrated when I wanted to take things slow, when I didn't have every step of our life planned out the way she did. She hated uncertainty, hated anything that didn't have a clear answer. I chalked it up to ambition, to her need for control. But looking back, maybe it was something else. By the time I turned 29, I knew it was time. I had been saving for months, setting aside every extra dollar, so I could buy her the perfect ring. I spent weeks searching, agonizing over the choice, wanting something that would reflect who she was: elegant, timeless, unforgettable. When I finally found it, I knew. The proposal wasn't some grand spectacle. I had thought about making it elaborate, about planning something extravagant, but in the end, it felt right to keep it simple. Just the two of us, standing in our apartment, the place where we had built our lives together. I cooked dinner, nothing fancy, just her favorite meal. I remember the way her eyes widened when I pulled out the ring, the way her breath caught in her throat before she whispered yes. That moment should have been the happiest of my life. It should have been the beginning of forever. But in hindsight, there were things I should have noticed. Her smile had faltered, just slightly. Her fingers had been cold when she reached for the ring. She had said yes, but there had been something else in her eyes, something I couldn't quite name at the time. Doubt. I didn't see it then. I was too caught up in the moment, too blinded by love to recognize that something had already shifted. At first, everything seemed normal. We celebrated, we told our families, we started planning the wedding. Olivia dove into the preparations with the same meticulous attention. She gave everything in her life. But there was something different. She was quieter than usual, distracted. There were times when I would catch her staring off into space, lost in thought, her brows furrowed like she was trying to work through something she couldn't quite grasp. She started spending more time at work, coming home later than usual. At first, I didn't think much of it. She had always been ambitious, always pushing herself to do more. But then there were the late-night phone calls, the hushed conversations in the other room. She was hiding something. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it, that she was just stressed with wedding planning, with work, with everything. But the truth was there, staring me in the face. I just wasn't ready to see it. And when I finally did, when the reality of it all came crashing down around me, I realized something else. Love doesn't just disappear overnight. It fades. It withers. It erodes, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the ghost of what it used to be. And sometimes, the person you love the most is the one holding the match. The first real fracture in our relationship came on an unremarkable Wednesday night. I had come home from work expecting the usual. Olivia is sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone while half listening to a podcast or going over some wedding plans. But the apartment was silent. I checked my phone, expecting a message saying she had to stay late at work, but there was nothing. Olivia had always been meticulous about time, always let me know if she was running late. The absence of a message, the stillness of the apartment, the way the unease settled in my chest like a slow-moving storm. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. She would walk through the door soon, apologize for forgetting to text, and everything would be normal. But I knew better. When she finally walked in 2 hours later, she didn't offer an explanation, didn't seem to think I deserved one. She set her keys down on the counter, flashed me a quick, almost forced smile, pressed a brief kiss to my forehead, and disappeared into the bedroom without a word. I should have asked where she had been. I should have demanded an answer. Should have told her how strange it was that she hadn't thought to let me know she'd be late. But I didn't. Maybe I was afraid of what she would say. Maybe I already knew. After that night, I started paying attention in a way I never had before. I had spent 6 years trusting her, never doubting her loyalty, never feeling the need to question where she was or who she was talking to. But something had changed. She was distracted, distant, always lost in thought. She still kissed me goodnight, still smiled at me across the dinner table, still asked me about my day. But there was something hollow in the way she said my name, something missing in the way she touched me, as if she was trying to convince herself that everything was fine. She started working later, spending more time on her phone, keeping it face down when she set it on the counter. It was such a small thing, a detail I wouldn't have thought twice about before, but now it felt deliberate, like a wall going up between us, a slow, creeping distance that I didn't know how to close. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it, that I was being paranoid. But then I saw the name. Not a text, not some dramatic message full of betrayal, just a simple notification on her lock screen. Liam Parker. A name I hadn't heard in years, but one that sent an immediate rush of cold through my veins. Olivia's what if. The man who had come before me. The one she had always left in the past but never truly let go of in her mind. Liam had been part of her college years, someone who had hovered between friend and something more. Nothing had ever happened between them, not in a way that mattered, but I had always known he was there. A possibility, a lingering thought, the what if that had never been answered. At first I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he had reached out randomly, maybe it was a meaningless text. But deep down I knew better. Olivia hadn't spoken about him in years. I had never seen his name pop up on her phone before, not even in casual passing. So why now? And why had she never mentioned it? I should have confronted her right away. I should have asked, but I didn't. Instead, I watched. I noticed how she started smiling at her phone more often, how she lingered in the other room during certain phone calls, how she suddenly had plans that didn't include me. And the worst part? She never even tried to hide it. She thought I wasn't paying attention, thought I was still the same man who trusted her without hesitation. But I wasn't. Not anymore. A week later, I finally broke. One evening, as she sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through her phone with a look that was almost too soft, too private, I casually asked if she had heard from anyone from college lately. The way she hesitated, just for a second, just long enough for me to notice, told me everything I needed to know. She recovered quickly, forced a smile, and shook her head. No, she hadn't talked to anyone from back then. It was such an easy lie, one she had probably convinced herself I would accept without question. But I had seen the name. I had seen the way her entire demeanor had shifted over the past few weeks. And now, I had proof that she was lying to my face. I didn't get angry. I didn't call her out, didn't demand an explanation. I just nodded, pretending to believe her, pretending I hadn't noticed the way she gripped her phone just a little tighter, the way her smile faded the second she turned away from me. But inside, something snapped. I had spent 6 years loving her, supporting her, planning a future with her. I had put her above everything, believed in us more than I had believed in anything else. And now, she was making a choice. She wasn't just thinking about someone else. She was choosing someone else. And that choice? That meant she was losing me. Something in me shifted that night. The blind trust, the unwavering faith I had always had in her. It was gone. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was just awake. I saw her for what she was, for what she had always been. And from that moment on, I stopped trying to hold on to something that was already gone. But I wasn't just going to walk away quietly. No. If Olivia wanted to see what she had been missing, if she wanted to chase the ghost of something that had never been real, then I was going to let her. I was going to put her exactly where she belonged. And when it was all over, she would realize the truth. Some doors should never be reopened. Some what-ifs should stay buried. And some mistakes? Some mistakes can never be undone. Something changed after that night. Not just in the way I saw Olivia, but in the way I carried myself around her. For 6 years, I had loved her without hesitation, had trusted her without question. Now, I was studying her like a stranger. Every movement, every glance at her phone, every slight shift in her tone. I analyzed it all. I wasn't just watching her anymore. I was waiting, because I knew. I knew where this road was leading, knew what she was inching toward with every unanswered question, every careful lie. She thought she was being discreet. She thought I wouldn't notice the way she turned her phone screen away from me when she got a notification, or how she suddenly had after-work meetings that kept her out later than usual. She thought I didn't see how her energy had shifted, how she had started to pull away, little by little, until the space between us was wide enough to let someone else in. I let her think that. I let her believe she was in control, that she was choosing how this story played out. But she wasn't. I had already decided how this was going to end. At first, I wasn't sure how far she would take it. Olivia was calculated, always careful. She wasn't the kind of person who made reckless decisions. She prided herself on control, on being logical. She had spent her entire life making the right choices. But emotions? They made people weak. And for the first time, I saw Olivia slipping. I saw the hesitation, the cracks forming in the perfect life she had built with me. And then one night, she broke. She thought I was asleep when she took the call. It was late, past midnight, the room dimly lit by the glow of her phone screen. I felt the bed shift as she rolled over, barely breathing as she slid out from under the covers. The way she moved, slow, careful, like she didn't want to wake me, was all the confirmation I needed. I kept my eyes closed, my breath steady, listening as she tiptoed into the living room. Then, the quiet murmur of her voice. Low, intimate, tinged with something that hadn't been there before. I didn't need to hear the words. I already knew who she was talking to. Liam Parker. She didn't say his name, but she didn't have to. The way she spoke, the softness in her voice, the small, breathy laugh that slipped out when he said something that made her smile. It told me everything. It wasn't the way she talked to a friend. It was the way she used to talk to me. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting. She was on the phone for nearly an hour. When she finally came back, she moved just as carefully as before, slipping under the covers as if nothing had happened. She didn't touch me. She didn't even look in my direction. The next morning, I didn't say a word. I got up, got dressed, kissed her on the forehead like I always did, and left for work. But inside, something in me was sharper, more focused. I had all the confirmation I needed. She wasn't just entertaining the idea of him. She was testing the waters, seeing how far she could go without getting caught. She thought she was still in control. That was her biggest mistake. I could have confronted her then. I could have demanded the truth, forced her to admit what she was doing. But that would have been too easy. And Olivia? She didn't deserve easy. She deserved to see firsthand what it felt like to watch something you thought was yours slip through your fingers. She wanted to explore her feelings for him. So I decided to give her exactly what she wanted. The next few weeks were quiet, too quiet. I played my part well, pretending I was none the wiser. I let her keep lying, let her think she was getting away with it. And the more I let her believe she was winning, the bolder she became. She started staying out later, coming home with excuses that didn't quite add up. She stopped talking about the wedding. Whenever I brought it up, she would smile, make some vague comment about how we still had time, how there was no rush. But there had been a rush before. She had been the one pushing for a venue, for finalizing details, for locking in dates. And now, suddenly, she was hesitating, pausing, waiting. For what? For who? Then the final piece fell into place. I came home early from work one afternoon, earlier than usual. Olivia was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand, her expression softer than I had seen in weeks. She was texting someone, her fingers moving quickly over the screen, a small, almost shy smile tugging at the corner of her lips. She didn't hear me come in. I stood there, watching, waiting, my stomach twisted into something dark and unrecognizable. I had never felt this before. Not anger, not betrayal, but something colder. She looked happy, happier than she had in months. And it wasn't because of me. That was the moment I realized she was already gone. She had made her choice. Now, it was my turn to make mine. That night, I set my plan in motion. I didn't get angry. I didn't accuse her. Instead, I did the one thing she never expected. I agreed. Over dinner, I looked her in the eye and told her I had been thinking. That maybe she was right. Maybe we had moved too fast. That it wasn't a bad thing to take a step back, to be sure before we made such a big commitment. Her reaction was immediate. The tension in her shoulders melted. Her grip on her fork loosened. Relief. That was what I saw. Not sadness. Not regret. Not fear that she might lose me. Relief. She'd been waiting for this. For me to give her permission to do what she had already decided she was going to do. She smiled, reaching for my hand, telling me that she loved me, that she was grateful I understood. I smiled back, told her I loved her too, and then I let her go. I let her believe she had won, that she had gotten away with it, that she was free to explore. But Olivia didn't realize something. I wasn't just letting her go. I was putting her exactly where she belonged. And when it was all over, when the dust settled and the truth came crashing down around her, she would understand. She had made the biggest mistake of her life. Letting Olivia go was easier than I thought it would be. Maybe because she had already gone, piece by piece, long before I gave her permission. Maybe because, deep down, I had already detached myself from the version of her I had once loved. The moment she smiled at me, believing she had been given a free pass to explore the fantasy she had built up in her mind, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't going to beg, wasn't going to fight for someone who had already turned away. She wanted to see what she had been missing, so I gave her the space to do it. It didn't take long for her to make her move. I saw it in the way she carried herself over the next few days, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. She wasn't distant anymore, wasn't pulling away, because she didn't need to. She had gotten what she wanted, and once she had it, she didn't waste any time. 3 days later, she told me she was going out with some friends. I smiled, kissed her goodbye, told her to have fun. She hesitated, just for a second, but then relaxed when she realized I wasn't questioning her. She had no idea I already knew the truth. She wasn't going out with friends. She was meeting him. I could have followed her, could have confirmed it with my own eyes. But I didn't need to. She had already given herself away. The way she dressed that night, putting more effort into her appearance than she had in months. The way she checked her phone repeatedly before leaving, as if waiting for confirmation. The way she left without looking back. She didn't expect me to look. so she didn't bother hiding it. That was the most insulting part. I let it go on for a few days, waiting, watching. Olivia had always been careful, always methodical. But emotions make people reckless. And she, for all her planning, was no exception. A week later, I had all the confirmation I needed. She left her phone unlocked while she was in the shower. It wasn't something she usually did. In fact, over the past few months, I had noticed how guarded she had become with it. Keeping it on silent, always face down, barely letting it out of her sight. But that night, she let her guard down. It wasn't intentional. She had just gotten too comfortable, too confident in her ability to keep her secrets hidden. And so, as the water ran in the background, I picked up the device that had been holding the truth all along. I didn't go through everything. I didn't need to. The messages were right there, easy to find. She hadn't even bothered to hide them under a fake name. Liam Parker. His words were casual, laced with a familiarity that shouldn't have existed between them. Tonight was amazing. I miss talking to you like this. I can't believe we let so many years go by without doing this sooner. And the worst one, I don't know what the future looks like, but I know I don't want to lose you again. I scrolled up. The conversation wasn't new. It had started before I had even given Olivia permission to explore her feelings. She had already been meeting him, already been testing the waters. I had just been a safety net, a backup plan she had been too much of a coward to let go of. I put the phone down exactly where I had found it, stepped out of the room, and stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror. I should have been angry. I should have felt my blood boiling, should have wanted to throw something, break something, scream at the walls. But I didn't feel any of that. I just felt calm, because now it was time. Letting her go had just been the first part of my plan. The next part? Making sure she had no way back. Over the next few days, I started laying the groundwork. I didn't confront her. I didn't give her any indication that I knew what she had done. I played the part of the understanding fiancé, the one who was giving her space, giving her time to figure herself out. And Olivia? She ate it up. She still kissed me goodnight, still said I love you, still pretended that nothing had changed between us. But everything had changed. She just didn't know it yet. While she was out with him, I was making my own moves. I started separating our finances, untangling our lives from each other in every way that mattered. The lease on our apartment was in my name, so I quietly arranged to have it transferred solely to me. I moved my valuable belongings to a safe location, knowing that when the time came, I wouldn't be leaving anything behind. I spoke to our friends, subtly placing the seeds of doubt in their minds before the truth would eventually come out. And then, finally, I prepared the final piece. Her worst nightmare wasn't me leaving. It wasn't me finding out about Liam. It was losing control of the narrative. Olivia had always been the one steering the ship, the one making the choices, deciding what happened and when. She thought she was easing into a new chapter, one where she could gracefully transition from me to him without consequences. She was wrong. When everything was in place, I made my move. That night, she came home late again, looking radiant in the way that only people in the honeymoon phase of something forbidden do. She tried to hide her excitement, but it was there, in the slight flush of her cheeks, in the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, in the small smile she wore even though she had no reason to be smiling at me. I waited until she had settled in, until she had gotten comfortable, until she had no idea that her entire world was about to shift beneath her feet. Then I told her that I knew everything, told her that she wasn't exploring her feelings. She was building a future with another man behind my back. Told her that I had already left her, long before she thought she had left me. And then I watched as her carefully constructed world came crashing down around her. She didn't get to be the one who walked away. I'd already done it first. And when it was all over, when the weight of her choices finally settled on her shoulders, she would understand the truth. She had lost the one thing she had never thought she could lose. Me. The silence after my words was suffocating. Olivia's face had gone pale. Her lips parted slightly like she wanted to say something, but the words just wouldn't come. It was the first time I'd ever seen her truly caught off guard. She had always been in control, always one step ahead, always calculating the best way to spin a situation in her favor. But now, for the first time, she had no script, no backup plan, no way to manipulate herself out of the truth. She blinked rapidly, her mind clearly racing, trying to catch up. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaky, desperate, like she was grasping at something that was already slipping through her fingers. I don't know what you mean. It was almost funny. Even now, even with the undeniable reality staring her in the face, she still thought she could gaslight her way out of this. She still thought she could lie, that I would doubt myself just enough to let her rewrite the truth. Maybe once I would have. Maybe months ago, if I had caught her in something smaller, I would have let her spin her story and convince me I was just being insecure. But that man was gone. I shook my head, letting out a quiet, humorless laugh. Don't, I said, my voice steady. Don't insult both of us by pretending you don't know exactly what I'm talking about. She flinched, and for a split second I saw it. The moment she realized she had lost. The moment she knew there was no way out of this. No lie that would undo what had already been done. Her hands gripped the edge of the table like she needed something to hold on to, something to anchor her in place. Daniel, she whispered, her voice softer now, shaking. Please just listen to me. It's not what you think. I was confused. That's why I needed space. I just needed time to figure things out. It wasn't. I cut her off with a quiet scoff, shaking my head again. Time to figure things out. I repeated slowly, letting the words settle between us. That's what you call sneaking around behind my back? That's what you call lying to me every single day? Her eyes welled up with tears, but I didn't care. Not this time. She had spent months carefully dismantling the trust one had given her, piece by piece, lie by lie. And now that the weight of her choices was finally crashing down on her, she wanted to cry? No, she didn't get to cry. She didn't get to play the victim. I stood up, pushing my chair back with deliberate slowness, keeping my gaze locked on her. You don't have to lie anymore, Olivia, I said, my voice quieter now. I already know everything. I know about Liam. I know about the messages. I know about the nights you needed space. I let out a slow breath, studying her, memorizing this version of her. The woman who had built a beautiful lie and convinced herself it was love. I hope he was worth it. Her hands shook as she reached for me, but I took a step back before she could touch me. Daniel, please, she pleaded, her voice breaking. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt nothing. No rage, no pain, no sorrow. Just cold, unwavering clarity. You did, though, I said simply. And the worst part is, you didn't even have the decency to be honest about it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the engagement ring. The one I had once believed symbolized a future we were supposed to build together. The ring that, for months, had felt like an anchor, keeping me tethered to a woman who had already let go. I placed it on the table in front of her and slid it toward her with 2 fingers. Here, I said. You can keep it, sell it, do whatever you want with it. It doesn't mean anything anymore. She sucked in a sharp breath, staring at the small velvet box as if it physically hurt her to look at it. No, she whispered, shaking her head furiously. No, I don't want that. I want you. I was confused, Daniel. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. We can go back. I studied her for a long moment, letting her last shred of hope dangle in the air between us. Then, I gave her the answer she never thought she would hear. There is no going back. I turned and walked away. I didn't take anything that night. I had already moved my important belongings out over the past few weeks when she wasn't paying attention. My name was off the lease. My finances were untangled from hers, and I had quietly made sure there was nothing left that connected me to her. By the time she truly realized I was gone, it would be too late. She called me the next day, and the next, and the next. Each time, her messages were different. First, they were full of apologies, frantic desperation, promises that she had made a mistake and that she loved me, that she had just been confused, that we could still fix things. When I didn't respond, the messages shifted. Anger, accusations, telling me I had given up too easily, that if I had really loved her, I would have fought for us. As if I had been the one who destroyed our relationship. I didn't respond to any of them. She reached out to our mutual friends, trying to spin the narrative, trying to make it seem like I had blindsided her. But she underestimated me. I had been ahead of her from the start. The truth had already spread before she even had the chance to rewrite it. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the heartbroken fiancée. She was the woman who had thrown away 6 years of love and loyalty for a what-if, and lost everything in the process. The last I heard, things with Liam didn't turn out the way she expected. Maybe he wasn't as interested in her once the secrecy and thrill of sneaking around were gone. Maybe she realized too late that she had destroyed something real for a fantasy that was never meant to last. Maybe she finally saw what she had done, finally understood that I had been the best thing in her life, and that she had willingly walked away from it. It didn't matter. By then, I had already moved on. I didn't look back. I didn't regret a thing, because Olivia had wanted to explore her feelings, and I had put her exactly where she belonged, alone.